During WWII, eat healthy wasn't a slogan, it was survival. Families grew magnesium-rich plants that kept muscles working and nerves steady under stress. Today, those crops are barely discussed. In the next minutes, you'll see the 5 plants, how they were grown, cooked, and why they vanished. Stay to the end. 2 of these plants still thrive in poor soil and heat when modern greens fail. Magnesium rarely gets the spotlight, yet it powers muscles, nerves, and heart rhythm. In WWII, that mattered. People worked harder, slept less, and ate simpler meals. Victory gardens and ration cooking depended on crops that grew reliably and carried minerals in every bite. This video tracks 5 magnesium-rich plants, how families grew them, cooked them, and why modern farming pushed them aside. We'll start with what to plant, where it thrives, what fails, and the foods it becomes. Today. Here's the roadmap so you know what's coming. Plant 1, Swiss chard. Cut and come-again leaves, great in cool weather but poor shelf life. Plant 2, amaranth. Heat-tolerant greens and seed, yet hard to harvest uniformly. Plant 3, fava beans. Cool season protein and minerals, but hates heat. Then Jerusalem artichoke. Perennial tubers that spread fast. Finally, purslane, a weed that thrives in drought. We'll cover planting, cooking, and the trade-offs, the traits that mattered in wartime gardens. During WWII, victory gardens were practical logistics. Small plots near homes, planted for steady harvest, not perfect rows. People direct sowed seeds, used kitchen scraps for compost, and watered when they could. Crops that tolerated missed care stayed on the list. Magnesium-rich greens and legumes mattered because they supported cramps, fatigue, and long workdays. If a plant demanded ideal conditions, it was quietly replaced by one that didn't. Afterward, shipping and uniform harvest won. Plant number 1, Swiss chard. WWII. Gardeners liked it because it starts easily from seed and keeps producing. Sow shallow, keep soil lightly moist until sprouts, then thin. Chard prefers rich, well-drained soil, but it still grows in average beds. It handles cool spring and fall and survives light frost. It struggles in extreme heat without water, when leaves toughen and pests can chew new growth. Cut outer leaves, leave the heart, and it returns. Families boiled it, sautéed it, folded it into soups. In wartime kitchens, chard was flexible. Stems could be chopped into stews. Leaves replaced spinach in casseroles, pies, or simple skillet greens with onions. Because it regrows, families could pick a little each day instead of harvesting all at once. Advantage: steady magnesium-rich greens from a small bed. Disadvantage: it wilts fast after picking, so it suits local eating, not long transport or storage. Space plants a foot apart. Crowding invites mildew. Drought stalls growth quickly. Plant number 2, amaranth. Wartime gardeners used it as a 2-in-1 crop. Leafy greens early, grain-like seed later. Sow tiny seeds on warm soil after frost, barely cover, and thin seedlings. Amaranth loves heat and sun and keeps growing during dry spells once rooted. It performs poorly in cold ground and can flop in heavy shade. Leaves cook like spinach. Seeds can be toasted, boiled as porridge, or ground into flour. Advantage: magnesium with low fuss. Disadvantage: seeds ripen unevenly and reseed. To harvest amaranth leaves, WWII cooks pinch the tender tops, letting side shoots keep producing. That pick-and-return habit stretched greens through summer when other crops struggled. For seed, they cut mature heads, dried them, then rubbed out tiny grains. Advantage: drought tolerance and magnesium-rich greens without constant watering. Disadvantages: it can reseed into a volunteer patch, and seed harvest is laborious compared with combine-friendly grains. Best in loose soil and full sun. Plant number 3, fava beans. In WWII gardens, they were sown early because they like cool weather. Plant large seeds an inch or 2 deep, spaced several inches apart, and keep soil moist during flowering. Favas tolerate light frost and grow well in spring or fall, but they suffer in hot summers, dropping blossoms and inviting pests. Families ate young pods fresh or shelled mature beans to dry for storage, useful when rations were tight. They fix nitrogen, but heat cuts yields, and some dislike the taste. In wartime cooking, favas went into soups, stews, and mashed spreads, often with onions or garlic. Dried beans were soaked overnight to shorten cooking and stretch fuel. Magnesium came packaged with protein and fiber, making them a compact staple. Advantage: they store well when dried and improve soil. Disadvantages: they need cool weather, can attract aphids, and the plants take space, so yields feel slow in tiny gardens. Stake stems against wind. Rotate beds yearly to cut disease too. So far you've seen 3 wartime staples: a regrowing green, a heat-proof leaf and seed crop, and a cool season bean. Next we'll move underground and sideways, into plants that survived shortages by hiding food in tubers or spreading like ground cover. Jerusalem artichoke can feed you for years from one planting, but it can take over a bed. Purslane can appear in the harshest soil, yet modern farming calls it a weed. That conflict explains the disappearance. We'll cover planting, cooking, control. Plant number 4, Jerusalem artichoke, also called sunchoke. During WWII, it was planted from tubers in early spring, a few inches deep and spaced well apart. It thrives in average or even poor soil and tolerates drought once established. Full sun produces taller plants and better tubers. It struggles in constantly waterlogged ground, where rot can develop. One planting can return for years, making it dependable in uncertain times. Families harvested Jerusalem artichokes gradually from late fall through winter, digging only what they needed. Tubers were roasted, boiled, or added to soups. Their mild, nutty flavor worked well in simple meals. Advantage: perennial growth and resilience in cold climates. Disadvantage: irregular tuber shapes complicate peeling and storage, and the plant spreads aggressively if not contained. Because Jerusalem artichokes spread underground, WWII gardeners often planted them along fence lines or at bed edges. This limited expansion and simplified harvesting. Cutting stalks after frost helped direct energy into tubers. Magnesium intake came steadily through winter meals. However, in small urban plots, controlling spread required attention, making them less attractive to later commercial systems. Plant number 5, purslane. Often dismissed today, it was gathered intentionally in wartime gardens. Seeds germinate in warm soil and require little care. Purslane tolerates intense sun, drought, and compacted ground where other greens fail. It performs poorly in deep shade and overly wet soil. Its low growth habit protects it from wind and heat. Purslane was eaten raw in salads or lightly sautéed. Its slightly tangy taste worked well with vinegar or simple dressings. Beyond magnesium, it provides omega-3 fatty acids. Advantage: rapid growth and extreme resilience. Disadvantage: reputation as a weed reduced its commercial appeal. In WWII, usefulness mattered more than status. Together, these 5 plants covered multiple seasons and conditions. Chard provided steady leaves in cool weather. Amaranth thrived in summer heat. Fava beans filled early spring. Jerusalem artichoke supplied winter tubers. Purslane filled gaps in dry soil. This diversity ensured mineral intake year-round without relying on imports. After WWII, agricultural priorities shifted toward mechanization and uniform harvest. Crops that matured at different times or regrew continuously became less convenient. Tubers that varied in size, greens that wilted quickly, and plants labeled weeds did not fit industrial systems. Efficiency began to outweigh resilience. Magnesium content did not decline because the plants failed. It declined because diets narrowed. Large-scale farming favored crops that shipped well and stored longer. Mineral density was rarely a marketing focus. Convenience and predictability reshaped fields and kitchens alike. Reintroducing these crops today follows the same simple methods used decades ago: direct sowing, moderate compost, and patient harvesting. They do not require advanced tools. Most perform best in full sun with average drainage, though each tolerates some stress. Their weaknesses are manageable at household scale. WWII forced food systems to prioritize survival over perfection. These magnesium-rich plants met that demand through reliability and adaptability. In peace, priorities changed, and convenience narrowed diversity. Understanding that shift clarifies why these foods faded, even though they still grow and nourish effectively today. Modern diets often separate nutrients from food itself. Magnesium appears on supplement labels and wellness ads, yet rarely in conversations about soil-grown crops. During WWII, families did not calculate milligrams or track intake charts. They depended on plants that reliably produced under stress. Mineral intake came naturally from everyday meals built from greens, beans, roots, and hardy garden vegetables grown steps from the kitchen door. Wartime gardens functioned as layered systems rather than single-crop solutions. If heat damaged one plant, another endured. Swiss chard carried cool seasons. Amaranth handled summer heat. Fava beans filled early spring. Jerusalem artichokes stored nutrition underground for winter. Purslane thrived in drought. Magnesium intake was distributed across seasons and plant types, reducing dependency on any single harvest or supply chain. In contrast, modern supermarket abundance often masks structural fragility. Shelves may appear full year-round, but much of that variety depends on centralized logistics and synchronized planting cycles. During WWII, reliance on local soil reduced vulnerability to transport disruption. Mineral intake was embedded within diversity and proximity, not distant coordination or refrigerated storage networks stretching across regions. Each plant carried limitations, yet those limitations were manageable at household scale. Chard spoiled quickly but regrew repeatedly. Amaranth required thinning, yet survived drought. Fava beans preferred cool weather but improved soil fertility. Jerusalem artichokes spread aggressively yet returned annually. Purslane grew abundantly but faced social stigma. Wartime priorities valued usefulness over aesthetic perfection. After WWII, agriculture reorganized around mechanization and scale. Crops that matured unevenly or required selective harvesting became less attractive for large operations. Uniformity simplified contracts, machinery, and packaging. Magnesium density rarely influenced planting decisions in expanding industrial fields. Predictability gradually replaced resilience as the defining standard of success. As production centralized in the decades following WWII, dietary diversity quietly narrowed. Fewer crops dominated larger acreage, and supermarket availability shaped eating habits. Magnesium intake became indirectly dependent on standardized vegetables and processed foods rather than diverse backyard plots. The transition did not remove minerals from soil, but it reduced the number of everyday sources people regularly consumed. Reintroducing these plants today does not require abandoning modern agriculture. It requires restoring diversity at manageable scales. Backyard beds, community gardens, and small farms can integrate them without complex machinery. Direct sowing, moderate compost, and gradual harvesting mirror the same techniques used during wartime gardens. Their advantages still operate under ordinary household conditions. Cooking methods remain accessible and practical. Swiss chard and purslane cook quickly and blend into soups or simple sautéed dishes. Fava beans store dried and simmer into stews that stretch ingredients further. Jerusalem artichokes roast or mash like potatoes, while amaranth leaves soften like spinach and seeds become porridge or flour. None require specialized equipment or advanced preparation. Their shared advantage lies in structural adaptability. Some prefer cool seasons, others intense summer heat. Some store nutrients underground, others spread across soil surfaces. This biological diversity distributes risk across weather patterns and soil variability. Magnesium intake emerges naturally from system design rather than dependence on a single celebrated vegetable. WWII gardens demonstrated that mineral-rich food could be grown with limited resources and simple techniques. Crops were selected for reliability under pressure, not for transport durability or standardized appearance. When peace returned, priorities shifted toward expansion and efficiency. That transition altered planting decisions and gradually reshaped everyday meals. As supermarkets expanded, neighborhood plots declined. Standardized produce replaced seasonal rhythms. Crops that resisted mechanization or spoiled quickly faded from commercial emphasis. Magnesium did not disappear from agriculture, but its diverse sources became less visible within routine cooking. Convenience gradually narrowed dietary structure. The decline of these plants was not caused by nutritional weakness. It was shaped by economics, scale, and logistics. Uniform harvest cycles simplified contracts and transport. Irregular growth complicated them. Wartime resilience prioritized survival. Peacetime systems prioritized efficiency and predictability across vast acreage. Reintroducing magnesium-rich crops today requires adjusted expectations. Harvests may not be synchronized week to week. Some plants reseed unexpectedly. Others demand seasonal timing. Yet these irregularities once functioned as safeguards against scarcity rather than flaws to eliminate. Diversity buffered failure. In smaller gardens, unpredictability becomes manageable and even beneficial. Continuous leaf harvest spreads nutrients across weeks. Perennial tubers reduce yearly planting labor. Heat-tolerant greens fill summer gaps when cool crops decline. Seasonal legumes anchor early spring. Diversity rebuilds mineral stability without industrial infrastructure. Swiss chard still withstands light frost. Amaranth still thrives in sustained heat. Fava beans still perform best in cool weather. Jerusalem artichokes still return from buried tubers. Purslane still emerges where other greens struggle. Their biological characteristics remain unchanged despite shifting agricultural systems. What changed was the surrounding framework. Mechanization favored synchronized planting and harvest. Packaging favored uniform shapes. Marketing favored familiarity and visual consistency. These forces gradually narrowed fields and expectations. Magnesium density rarely determined which crops scaled across industrial acreage. WWII provided a historical example of food systems operating under constraint. Adaptable crops sustained families without advanced inputs or global logistics. Their mineral contributions were embedded in ordinary meals rather than highlighted in labels. That experience challenges assumptions about complexity and resilience. Modern life still includes stress, labor, and dietary imbalance. Magnesium continues to support muscle contraction and nerve stability. Expanding the range of crops grown locally strengthens nutritional diversity without rejecting modern progress. The lesson is not regression, but balance. These 5 magnesium-rich plants once supported communities through global conflict. They still grow, still nourish, and still adapt to imperfect conditions. Remembering them is less about returning to wartime hardship and more about restoring options that quietly narrowed as agriculture transformed.